Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with veteran New York City jazz guitarist Will Sellenraad. He talked about his latest 2019 CD Greene Street Volume 1, and the theme here is family. He's very busy being a dad, and this ends an actual album drop for him. It will be available on June 14, 2019 on Deko Music, and it's a follow-up to his CD called Balance. He has earned a growing reputation of being on the forefront of creative musicians working in New York City today. Known for his brilliant improvisations and his compelling melodic compositions, he melds the various styles, phrasings, and concepts of the jazz idiom with the raw elements of soul, rock, and funk to create a singular sound that is very inspiring. So please get to know this cat and dig this interview, my friends.
So, Will, hey, thanks for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz. It's an honor to speak with you.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So let's go ahead and dive into your brand new album, Greene Street Volume 1. The thing that reverberates out of this is family. And, there's a lot of history that goes into this. So talk to me about the artistic vision for this project.
I haven't put out any music in quite a bit since I've been a dad. And so my kid's he's 12 now. So it's been a while. And I was wondering how really how to go about doing it, especially these days. The music business is a little different. I don't think there is a right way, and I didn't really want to just go into the studio and when we did Balance, which is my last one, I was very fortunate to get to play with everybody on that record a lot. So that's not like I just hired some guys and we went in the studio and that was it. But, we were pretty rehearsed and we went in and we did that record in a day, and everything was either the first take or the second take. The first take was kind of a rehearsal, and then the second take, was it, or it was the first take, and that was the thing. But so this record, I just wanted it to be a little more, a little closer to what it's actually like, as a musician, and the process that we go through of, developing. So my dad is a painter, and he's not living in the house any longer. So we had his painting studio, and so we had some space. So we started building the studio, and it took a while to get it sounding right and get just the room to sound good. And then we had to figure out what to get to actually record it. So the process was a little lengthier than it would have been if we had just gone in the studio. I think it's a little more intimate in just the fact, every track on this record is, it's still a take, it's not like it was heavily edited. We did some stuff to the electronics. It's the process of these tunes kind of developing and us playing them, and, we would get together and play and say, oh, that's kind of nice. We like the way we did it there. So the next time we would get together, we would start there, and it would develop. So, I'm definitely looking forward to getting to the next one as well.
So you said there's been a gap between albums for you. What's been going on, and why has it taken a while for you to have a new CD out?
Well, just parenting in general, and I've been in New York working, so I've been playing a lot and practicing and trying to develop. But just the way the music business is, there just wasn't a lot of opportunities, at least for me, to record. Yeah, so, I know there are a lot of people putting out records all the time, and it's getting easier. It's amazing we can do that, in more of an intimate setting these days. That's pretty much, does that answer the question?
Yeah, and the thing that I find admirable about that, as a parent myself, being pretty involved with my kids, is that I think that not only is that admirable for a musician to have that as kind of the backbone, it says a lot about them, but it has to add to the overall maturity and wisdom that goes into the recording process. Is that true?
Oh, well, thank you. But yeah, most definitely. We don't really want to just, God, it's so easy to make records these days. You can do it, but, what are you really putting out there? I have a friend who's put out a lot of records, and it's whoa, you're putting out so many records, but maybe it'd be better to just put out half of that and really fine tune them a little bit. So anyway, everyone's got their own way of doing things. I also like to have some control out of like what I'm putting out. So, you know, that's another reason this process, it took a while, but I'm glad where we are now. And now I feel like I can be a little more active with, you know, we have the studio, it is fully functioning, and, you know, we can just get together and play and document it. And I mean, that's it's an amazing luxury for musicians, especially in New York. But it is a beautiful process and a beautiful thing to have access to. So I feel very fortunate in that.
So you're a New York native. Talk to me a little bit about your childhood and how you got into not only jazz, but playing music.
Well, you know, my parents are both painters. And I started pretty late with music. It was always on in the guitar. In the house. My parents really loved classical music, so that was on a lot. But I kind of really rebelled against the whole painting art thing because, you know, they would always take me to openings and I would just be the only kid there and all these adults drinking wine and stuff. But I couldn't really escape it totally, you know, so there was a lot of music in the neighborhood and just in New York in general, always, of course, like, you know, the mecca of jazz and all that. But it wasn't really until I was really in the blues for a long time as like a kid and the Beatles and all that. But it wasn't until I think I was about 14, I was in Detroit and my cousin took me to a loft. It's funny, I was just there this past weekend, but he took me to some loft party like in the city downtown in Detroit somewhere. I don't know, we took a train. I mean, that was a long time ago, but and I think it was like Marcus Belgrave was playing, which I had no idea who that was, but I do now. And so that totally blew my mind. Like there was just a woman there serving sandwiches and like, I mean, it was so great. And I was like, wow, that is cool. And then I started getting into more jazz and just not really thinking I could do it, but just, you know, I was very into it. And, you know, Eric and also Abraham Burton and Nasheet Waits, I went to middle school with them. And they were always doing it. I remember seeing Abraham at the Vanguard playing with Arthur Taylor. And, God, I think we were like 18 or 19 when I was checking that out. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, it just kind of went from there, you know.
So talk to me about some of your mentors early on, some of those people that really molded the way you play and the way that you see the world of music these days.
I got to give huge credit. When I was in college, I was like most guitar players. I was like super into Jimi Hendrix and all that stuff, and Steve Ray Vaughan and that kind of thing. And anyway, I got to college and I was roommates with Gabe Jarrett, son of Keith, the drummer, great drummer. He lives up in Burlington in Vermont. And so, yeah, if you have a chance to check him out, please do. But so we were roommates in college, and he was a huge influence on me and had a great record collection, obviously. That was pretty cool. And we had a music teacher up there, Don Glasgow, who was pretty helpful too. But we realized up there that we couldn't really get where we wanted to go living up there. So we actually both came down to the new school in college, and Gabe was only there, I think, for like a semester, and then he got a gig, so he was out on the road, so he stopped going to school up there, and or down here in New York. And so when I was at the new school, it was really Reggie Workman was a huge influence on me, and Arnie Lawrence, when they were kind of both running the school down there. And, you know, there were a lot of teachers, Chico Hamilton, you know, I can go on and on about the musical faculty. Gary Dial also is a great piano player. I studied with him actually after graduating too for probably about I still do off and on, but yeah, I studied with him for like 20, 25 years or something like that since getting out of college. So he was a huge influence, without a doubt.
Right on. So has the stage always been kind of a natural extension for you, for your creative id, or how has the stage been, especially in the beginning when you started out? Were you nervous, or was it where you needed to be?
Oh, no, I always get nervous. I mean, even to this day, I mean, you know, and I think, you know, you have to find a way to channel that. But I think it just really means that you care. No one wants to be unprepared, and that's a whole different kind of way of being nervous. That's more of like a doom and gloom kind of thing. But so it's not really that, but yeah, I still get butterflies, and especially if it's somewhere I haven't played or if it's an important gig or something. There's always a bit of it's the beauty of jazz, because you show up and you don't really know. You could have a whole set list and you could get as prepared as you possibly can be, but it's not really gonna. You never know how it's gonna go, and especially with playing with like Eric McPherson or someone of that stature, they are always throwing some things at you. And Renee, there's always something going on that, we can play the same tune all night, every night, and it's going to be different every time. So, it's pretty amazing.
So you've been at this game, the jazz game, for quite some time, and you got a new album coming out. There's a lot that you've seen. You're in the mecca of jazz. Are you happy with where you're at with your career right now?
I think all jazz musicians should be doing better. It is, a beautiful art form that is far underappreciated. So, no, I would say, I wish us all, fame and fortune, and, or at least the fortune part, because, we work pretty hard doing what we do. And, so, not even just for myself. I'm very fortunate to even still be playing music. It is a total blessing, and, don't take that for granted. So, been working hard just to try and get better. That's all we can do. So I can't even really think of that as far as where my career is. This record is just coming out, so I'm just trying to kind of get back in the conversation as far as making records goes. I've been out in New York playing and stuff.
The one thing that's very good about our walk in life, whether we're a fan or we're a musician, is those first seminal shows that we catch, especially jazz-wise for our purposes. So what was one of the very first jazz shows that you caught live that really inspired you?
Well, there was that thing in Detroit, but I must say, I remember it like it was yesterday. So when I was in college, I didn't even mention this. I was very fortunate in the mid-'90s. I did the sound at Sweet Basil, which is a jazz club in the Village. So I got to hang out and meet a lot of musicians. From Tommy Flanagan, to Billy Higgins. Pat Metheny, Jim Hall, whatever, you name it. Abdul Ibrahim was amazing, and Don Poland, and anyway, I can go on and on. So that was a really amazing experience. And also to see kind of how band leaders would come in for sound check and run that, and then how the band would go through the week. Sometimes the first night was they really need to work it out. Other bands would be from the downbeat, be totally on it, and then but some of the bands who needed a little work by the end of the week would be, unbelievable. So that was a really amazing experience. I remember being at the Vanguard, and it was just when Joshua Redman was kind of coming out, and he was playing there with Pat Metheny and Charlie Hayden and Billy Higgins. And I went down there, and that band sounded so good. I think it was from that Wish record. And I just remember seeing that and just being like, wow, I want to try and do that. So that was definitely an important moment for me,
Yeah.
That was quite memorable, But I've been very fortunate to see a lot of music, and especially the mid-'90s in New York was really, it was kind of that Young Lion thing was happening, but we still had access to, all these masters of the people who created the music, and that is where I got to meet Victor Lewis and, quite a lot of people. So that had a huge effect on just my life as a human being, but then obviously as a musician as well. So.
Yeah, without a doubt. So why do you love jazz?
Well, that's an interesting question. It is, it can be anything. The jazz police might not like to hear me say that, but especially when I'm teaching, if I'm teaching somebody and they're not necessarily that into jazz, I'm just kind of well, how could you even say that? Because it encompasses everything, especially these days. So, you would like to think of it as somebody swinging, like the Spang Lang on a ride cymbal, but, I would say these days incorporates more than just that. So I think what we're all after is true freedom within the music, as musicians. But to get there, who knows if we'll ever get there, because we're, inhibited by, certain restraints some people might have with their particular instrument. And to get to true self-expression and letting the music really kind of speak through you, that is kind of the goal. And that's the chase. That's the lifelong chase, that I'd say most, good musicians are after. It's not really even about, we all need to eat, but it's not about money or, fame or like how you're doing it downbeat or, any of that stuff. It's so relevant when it comes down to actually dealing with the music. Currently, that's kind of what I'm really trying to get stronger with, and I think the business that's a whole nother thing, and we have to do it, but it has nothing to do with the other thing,
So everything's going to come down to this. Everyone has a perception or a version of who they think you are. Your family, your friends, your colleagues,
Sure,
your fans. But you know yourself best. Who do you think you are?
I'm just trying to be a better me. That's a funny question. Like, especially, I did like an organ record a while back with Brian Charette and Darren Beckett. And it was funny because it was like we did some kind of backbeat stuff. And then I remember hearing people, they were like, oh, man, you're like into that kind of soul jazz backbeat thing. And I was like, yeah, well, I'm also into a lot of other stuff, So it's funny how you can kind of get put into a box, and like, so this current record is, my God, it's so different than that. And so I don't know if they're going to think I'm Mr. Electronics now or whatever. But the funny thing about that is, Renee, the bass player, is pretty much, I do some stuff on Eric's song, Future, but for the most part, I'd say, all those sounds are coming from Renee. It's just this particular thing, I don't know. I'm just trying to be better me. What can we do as human beings?
Absolutely. That's great. Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And I think that kind of wraps everything up. And hey, Will, thank you for taking some time out. Thank you for the music. And I look forward to more that comes out.
Oh, man, thank you so much for having me, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in New York City, Kansas City, and spots all over the globe, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Will for his time, his music, and his cool. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.